morning. Welcome to Frank's School. 115th day of the 5th year. First video. I'm being philosophical. Yesterday or the day before I was getting philosophical. Now I'm being philosophical about Frank's School. And I think I'll go on with that subject maybe for 2 or 3 more videos, but I'm not going to beat it into the ground. I'm sorry about the light yesterday. I don't know if it's going to be any better today or not. I tried, but if you want to badly enough, you can understand what I'm saying, and you might be able to read what's on the blackboard. Some things to go on to about yesterday. I mentioned colors. I probably didn't say as much about that as I maybe should have. Advertising you get a newspaper. You know, the newspaper is largely black and white. But then there's all these sheets with all these dazzling colors, and the same thing on television screens and neon signs and stuff. I mean, it's just a way of life, I guess. But anyway, very early in my life, I chose wood and white as my colors for carpentry that I would do, especially interior decorating. If it was white, and if it was any kind of wood, new, old, any species, stressed, sanded, polished, as long as it was wood, not painted, wood and white, that would be my style. And I've stuck with it, also with the outside things, actually, the huts. And brown, people always said, what's your favorite color? I finally realized it's brown. Brown. Nobody likes brown. I like brown. Well, another thing, reading. What I said about reading, I've started to read. Not only that book, History of Technology, I've been reading that. I've been reading that to put myself to sleep at night. But I actually bought a book, Thomas Hardy, The Woodlanders, and I intend to read it. I'm actually going to sit in a chair and read a book. And I was thinking about that. It's kind of amazing. I've heard that many people actually do that. They spend a lot of time sitting. They're perfectly healthy people sitting still reading. I'm being facetious, I suppose, but that's what I do when I'm injured, as I now am, or I'm sick. There, on a rare occasion, I'll actually choose a book and read it. It keeps me still. All right, another thing. I said things were rough back in those old days, the coal mines and stuff like that. Yes, they were. I'm sure they were. And I was saying don't be romantic about it. But things I think could get better if we were really lucky. And depending upon how bad the train wreck that I talked about is going to be, there have been develops in technology which could be used to make not only human life, but life in general, animal life as well, much better, I think. Another thing, pulling humans out of nature gradually. Well, public parks was a response to that eventually. And public parks are lovely things. Arboreti, plural of arboretum, botanical gardens. When I travel, I go to them. I love them. They're great. But that's not the same. That's not the same as actually living and almost wrestling with the world of nature, which was, I'm going to have a cat fight here, have it already, which was the case before so many people got drawn into the cities and then all those problems developed. The problems that came from the cities are often addressed and talked about, but the problem of now having pulled humans away from nature is a little bit harder to explain. So I wanted to mention public parks. I've got David. I'm talking about David of the Bible. He was a psalmist. I find myself thinking about him because he had this compulsion to sing. I used to teach my students that David, you'd heard about David killing Goliath and stuff, but his first claim to fame was as a poet and a singer. And all his life he seemed to have this compulsion to sing. When his best friend Jonathan was killed, he sang a lament. When he lost his son Absalom, he sang a lament. His compulsion was to sing, Well, I have that there because I think in a way my compulsion is to teach. I'm being so philosophical or thinking these thoughts. So what's my response? We'll teach about All right, right now it is June, toward the end of June, and there's this great rush of growth that goes on in the world here, and it's added to by the fact that I have irrigated so much of the farm and there's so much water everywhere, and it has been a very wet June. Well, with that huge rush of growth, I mean that's wonderful in a way, but it's also a problem. Guys are trying to make hay, they're mowing their lawns. People get so upset because it's too wet to get on their riding mower and ride around on their riding mower and mow their lawn. Well, yeah, June is like that, and I'm responding too. You know, I'm seeing stuff just go wild and get out of control. My goats, meantime, are doing their best to to eat stuff, but that'll take a year at least. That's June versus August. Now in August here, it often gets very, very dry, so the ground's almost like cement. Well, I just sort of throw that in. It affects some of the stuff I'm doing, like tromping around in the mud, like I was doing yesterday and the day before someplace. That very same place is going to get as hard as concrete later. All right, now on to other things here. Yesterday, my apprentice, that's what I think of him as, Matthew is his name, he arrived. I heard my dog barking. I looked down and here his mother left him off, and he came walking up the lane. He arrived. And I hadn't seen him for a while. I didn't know if I was going to see him this summer, and I just wasn't sure. Well, it turns out he had also had some health, still has some health issues of his own. But he came and he wanted to work. Things hadn't changed. He'd finished his school year, junior. He's now a senior. And, I was sort of settling into the fact that, I'm going to sit here and feel bad about my shoulder and probably not do anything, drink beer. But here he arrived, so we worked. It was like Deus ex machina, I think that's what you say. It's like that literary device is all of the, well, the arrival of the apprentices. I put that into the description of the movie Resurrection, because in a similar state, when the principal actors are just being completely overwhelmed and they can't make it, apprentices arrive. Well, it sort of happened. Ultimately, I'll maybe have much more to say about him. This, I don't want to call. He's right at the point where he's not really a boy anymore. But what an age difference! I think he's still 17. I'm 70. He's 17. Why is he here? He's here to learn. And to do the stuff I'm doing. I mean, it's kind of an amazing business. And that age, that huge age difference, I've thought a good bit about that, because in the spanning years, where could I find somebody or people that could understand how I think? I just, as I go back through younger people and younger people and younger people, I don't think they can. I'm not sure. Now, at that age, maybe so, because the world that Matthew, for example, is going to go into, he's a wonderful student. He's going to go to college and he's thinking about his career and stuff like that. The world that he's going to have his effect on is different enough now from the way young people perceive it, that they may a little more easily be able to understand where I'm coming from. I don't know. Anyway, it was wonderful. All right, now, going on, decommissioning, and I'll be sort of quick about this. I mentioned decommissioning. What if I can't finish what I've started? Do I leave a big mess? I hope not. I mean, I'm going to work on that now. Not so much the buildings that I'm repairing. The older buildings, they needed to be repaired. They still need to be repaired. But all these huts that I'm building, I mean, it's going to number over 20. Maybe 11 full size. Those would be 8 by 12. Maybe 10 or so part size. What about all of them? Well, one thing I should explain is I recently realized I can come to a landing. Like when you go upstairs, you're going upstairs, you get so far and there's a landing. Take your breath and then you can go on up more steps. Well, a landing for me is going to be about this height. It's going to be fence height on these buildings. I'm not going to, well, people have been frustrated a little bit, like when they say, well, why don't you just build a building and then build the next building and then build the next building? And I'm very often not so good with words. I can't easily explain that, even to myself. I just sort of do what seems like that's what needs to be done. And there are reasons. It has a lot to do with the fact that these buildings are part of the fence, and I really need good fencing. Uh, and by the time I get that high, they're okay there to contribute to the fence in line or as corners or whatever. So fence height, there's the sill, I mean the floor, the sill, the first course of pallets, and then the rail, and that's a stable place to stop. I may even take some that I've got the second course on, and I may decommission them, unbuild them down to that level to sort of keep until I can get to doing the rest of the top. But with one prototype, I will finish one building and take whatever time I have to so that it's apparent, here's what I'm aiming at, and here are all these starts. Now, one real nice thing about that is from that point on, so many of the parts of these huts can be shop built. They can actually be built in my shop where it's shady in the summer where it's cool and shady. In the winter it's out of the wind, it's out of the rain. I've got the company of the goats there. The joists should be built in the shop and then carried out there. The rafters, same thing. They're actually a bit complicated, as maybe you'll see. The trim can pretty much be pre-cut and even pre-drilled and then taken out there. The opening, the frames for the openings, the doors and the windows, those frames, they really need to be built in the shop. So all of these could be built and then taken to the site. So that would be nice. That would be pleasant. I have two difficult jobs, truly hard jobs to do. And one of them I'm working on right now. It's that guest house. It's saving the first big barn that my grandfather built. And the second one is that building that is in some danger of falling in. I've got to get underneath it and jack it up, that really big building. So I've got two really hard jobs. But after that, at least I can look forward to being able to work on a level floor, you know, in a shop, instead of tromping through the mud and stumbling over stuff and swatting the bugs and stuff. Yeah, okay, well, I think that's probably already more than I wanted to say today, but thanks for listening. Bye for now.